In a distant land, there lived a king and queen who, for a long time, were unable to have children. But one day, a beautiful daughter was born, a princess, and the entire kingdom celebrated the joyous event. The king and queen arranged a grand feast and invited 7 good fairies from across the realm to bestow gifts of happiness and beauty upon the child. The first fairy gave the princess exceptional beauty, the second, compassion and kindness, the third, wisdom and intelligence, the fourth, an enchanting voice and musical talent, the fifth, grace and elegance, and the sixth, courage and strength of spirit. When it was the 7th fairy's turn, a wicked witch suddenly appeared. Offended by not being invited, she angrily cast a curse. When the princess turned 16, she would prick her finger on a spindle and fall into an eternal sleep. The last good fairy, who had not yet given her gift, softened the curse. The princess would not die, but instead fall into a deep sleep until the day a kiss of true love awakened her. In an attempt to protect his daughter, the king banned all spindles and spinning wheels in the entire kingdom, and the princess grew up surrounded by care and love. But on her 16th birthday, the princess wandered away from the celebration. She left the lively hall and followed narrow corridors, climbing a forgotten stone staircase to one of the castle's highest towers. The walls were covered in dust, cobwebs, and moss, and the air smelled of the passage of time. The door to the tower stood ajar. In a dimly lit room, where sunlight streamed through a narrow window, an old crooked woman sat silently spinning at a spindle, wrapped in a dark shawl. A soft, hypnotic sound filled the room. Curious, the princess approached. Her gaze was drawn to the thin thread sliding between the woman's fingers and to the spindle itself, an object she had never seen before. Enchanted by the motion, she reached out her hand. The moment her fingers touched the tip, the world around her vanished. Her eyelids grew heavy, her body relaxed, and she slowly sank to the floor. A magical sleep enveloped her, light as mist, and deep as silence. At that very moment, the entire kingdom fell asleep. Courtiers, guards, animals, birds, and even the wind, everything froze in stillness. Only the king and queen remained awake, for they had to continue ruling the land and watching over their daughter. With great sorrow, they carried the princess to her chambers, laid her on a golden canopy bed, and covered her with an embroidered blanket. It was the good fairy who had carefully altered the witch's curse. The princess would not die, but sleep. So that she would not be alone, the fairy let everyone else sleep as well. Soon, an impenetrable wall of thorny roses surrounded the castle, and time seemed to stop. Many years passed, and legends were born about the vanished castle. Some said it had disappeared completely, others that an enchanted princess slept within its walls. One day, a brave prince rode by. He had heard the legend but never believed it, until he saw tall towers through the treetops in the distance. Amazed, he rode closer. There was nothing marked on the map. What was this place? His curiosity was piqued. He decided to uncover the truth. The closer he came, the thicker the forest grew. Thorns and branches twisted together, as if protecting a secret. The prince drew his sword and began cutting his way forward. Thorns tore at his cloak, but he pressed on undeterred. It was as if the brambles resisted him, but at last, they began to give way. At the castle, the heavy gates, covered in ivy and roses, opened by themselves. The prince stepped inside, and was met by a world frozen in time. Everywhere were old furnishings, dusty chandeliers, tapestries on the walls. On benches and in corridors, people lay in deep sleep, dressed in outdated clothing. With curiosity, the prince wandered through the halls, peered into rooms, and touched objects covered in dust. Silence was absolute, only his footsteps echoed. He climbed a wide staircase and entered the princess's chamber. There, on a golden bed beneath a canopy, lay a young woman sleeping. Her face was peaceful, her breathing barely visible. Her hair flowed like golden rivers across the pillow, her hands resting gently on her chest. The prince stopped. Spellbound by her beauty, he could not take his eyes off her. Everything else faded, only she remained, still in the light and silence. Drawn by a deep inner calling, he leaned over and gently kissed her. At that very moment, the ancient curse was broken. The princess's eyes slowly opened, a smile spread across her face, and she met the prince's gaze as if she had always known him. At the same time, life returned to the castle. Birds sang, flowers bloomed, clocks began to tick again. Everyone woke from a deep slumber, servants, knights, musicians. No one knew how much time had passed. Soon, a wedding was held for the prince and princess. The celebration was joyful and bright, and from that day on, the entire kingdom lived in happiness and peace.